The Austin Metro was do or die for British Leyland. The British car to beat the world, launched in 1980, would be a success for BL, keeping it afloat into private ownership. Through lack of investment, the Metro would have its reputation damaged, and after 18 years of facelifts to keep the Metro alive, it would all end with a bang, when the Rover 100 would fail the Euro NCAP crash test in spectacular fashion. What if things were different? Behind the scenes, engineers at Austin Rover were hard at work, creating a Metro replacement that would take them into the new decade of the 90s and beyond. Like the BMC 9X, this was another crucial car that would have been do or die for its manufacturer, BL and Austin Rover. But as history tells us, this car would be cancelled, sealing the fate of Austin Rover in the small car sector, with an entire lineup of cars lost. A brilliant replacement for the Metro would be created, the AR6, which would morph into the R6X in its later years. This is the story of how Austin Rover passed up a car that could have been a game changer, with new technologies, advanced manufacturing, and a 100 mpg 3-cylinder engine years ahead of any other manufacturer. And how Austin Rover would pass up an entirely new product lineup, the AR7 Maestro, to the AR16, which would be cancelled, sealing the fate of Britain's largest car manufacturer. Hello everybody, and welcome to this video on the Austin AR6. If you're not subscribed already, please make sure to do so. It really does help me out and you get to see more of this. More history videos, more projects like 2600R, my Rover SD1, my Ford Cortina and 75, and you get to see more cars and conversions uncovered. This video is on the Austin AR6 and its related models. Do you think this was a missed opportunity for British Leyland and Austin Rover in the 1980s? Let me know in the comments below. Do you have any Austin memories as well as any memories of British Leyland? Drop them down there in the comments as well. Make sure to like the video if you liked it, but without further delay, let's get into the lost world of the Austin AR6. The Metro, launched in 1980, would become one of the most fashionable cars of the new decade of the 80s, in its first and second year of production. The British car to beat the world was winning. The Metro would sell 165,000 units in its first full year of production, beating the VW Polo Mark I substantially by 62,000. The Metro was winning, but for how long? BL, under new management after the turmoil of the early to mid-70s, knew they needed to invest in the future. For the first time, BL's whole workforce was thinking to the future and not the short term, setting the scene for some innovative cars and projects. With the new era of the 80s and the Rover 800 in development, British Leyland, now known as Austin Rover, would appoint a new team headed by Roy Axe in the Canley design studio. The brief was to move Austin Rover and its models forward into the late 80s and beyond, with a completely new direction. The first project, of course, would be the Rover SD1's replacement, the Rover 800. But in 1982, Austin Rover would think long term. This time, even in its most successful years, the team at Austin Rover were looking forward, looking to turn their new beginning into a new era marked by prosperity and innovation as well as stability, far away from the missed opportunities, mismanagement and turmoil of the 1970s. Austin Rover knew in order to survive they needed to escape the short-term thinking. This would lead the team at Canley, headed by Roy Axe, to be appointed to create the new Metro. It would be designated internally as Project 90 or AR6. The AR6 would find its DNA in an older British Leyland model, but not in the way you might think. Gone were the ways of old. The parts bin wouldn't be based on existing models, it would be based on advanced technology from experimental cars. In 1979, BL technology would be created by combining several development departments across British Leyland. This would be based at the newly built Gaydon test site. In 1980, BL technology would go public with the first ECV2, with the designation standing for Energy Conservation Vehicle, its first major announcement since the SD1. This car was based on the long-forgotten ADO 88, the Metro before the Metro even existed. A promising car that never left the drawing board would see new life again, a second chance. The new car would achieve 100 miles per gallon at 30 miles per hour, and over 60 miles per gallon at 60 miles per hour, figures unheard of at the time. The success of ECV2 would allow BL Technologies to create the ECV3, using the currently in development engine known as the K-Series. But not as you may think, a 3-cylinder 1.1 litre version, capable of 133 miles per gallon. Lessons learned and technologies from ECV3 would be incorporated into the new AR6, a highly aerodynamic and fuel-efficient car, years ahead of the competition, with the lucrative 100 mile per gallon goal, something other manufacturers wouldn't even start to think about until the early 2000s. AR6 would emerge in 1982 as a prototype of a highly aerodynamic modern hatchback, but this car would incorporate even more lessons learned from another project, the Alcan Austin Rover aluminium program, a project to create cars fully from aluminium to lighten the cars and increase fuel efficiency. The AR6 would be made from aluminium using the permabond process, 17 years ahead of the Audi A2 and 21 years before the Jaguar XJ X350. The second prototype would be penned by Stephen Harper. This would use a new design theme, known as the Mouse, which would be explored but ultimately dropped, as management would comment it was too advanced for the day. In 1983, another styling proposal would appear, to be explored further, with a windowed version being produced to evaluate the model. The original design would be approved instead, the family look that Austin Rover had been trying to achieve with the new 800, the incredible Rover CCV and MG EXE concepts. It's easy to see what this family of cars would have looked like. The approved design would have advanced aerodynamics and an advanced almost glass house window area, allowing for near 360-degree vision for the driver. The new Austin Rover was advanced, bold and sporting, creating the future of British motoring. But there was a problem. During 1984, the company would begin to prepare for privatization, after disappointing sales of the Maestro and Montego, which should have been launched a lot earlier. Unfortunately for Austin Rover engineers, this would lead to rationalisation of projects. In 1984, a steel-bodied car would be made, a fully running prototype, using the S-Series 1.6 litre engine, while the K-Series project was still ongoing, with the donor interior from a Maestro Van den Plas. The AR6 would move away from Metro suspension, using a more conventional McPherson strut setup. It would retain the curved glass of the design model as well, making it nearly identical to the styling prototype. The engineering unit would be driven extensively to test the new chassis, while it waited for its K-Series engine. The range wouldn't just be confined to a hatchback with 3 and 5 door models. Austin Rover had other plans, including an MG, a revival of one of the most iconic MGs ever made, the MG Midget, based on the AR6. The AR6, however, wasn't the only car at the time being considered for re-engineering and facelift. Austin Rover in the mid-80s were on the cusp of creating an incredibly exciting new range of cars, with the Rover 800 leading the range, and several facelifts of the original Austin lineup, such as the Maestro AR7, and the Montego replacement AR16 and 17, a full lineup of truly magnificent cars. In 1985, however, the dream of a completely new lineup for the late 80s and 90s was shattered, when Austin Rover were told to prepare to be sold off, leading executives to cancel the AR7 and AR16. Internally, a struggle would begin. The AR6 would start to be cut down to make sure it didn't meet the same fate. A more conventional version would be created in 1985 without the curved glass, producing a more anonymous version of the AR6, which would be cheaper to develop and easier to produce. Sadly, it was all for nothing. The AR6, the car to lead Austin Rover into the late 80s and beyond, would be cancelled, effectively cancelling their own long-term future in the small car space. The newly appointed executive at the time, Graham Day, would implement Roverization, rebranding all models as Rovers, with Austin models such as the Metro, Maestro and Montego losing their identity in the late 80s during the transition period. Internally, the company knew they wouldn't be able to continue the reselling of the original Metro into the 90s without significant changes. Roy Axe and the Canley team would create a brand new Metro, the R6X, in 1987, powered by the K-Series engine, using a PSA gearbox. The styling was created by David Saddington, with the underpinnings shared almost identically with the Austin Metro, but it simply wasn't enough to convince Austin Rover's management. The company was on a march to privatization, and this would lead to cost constraints across the board. The accounts needed to be in order to find a buyer. Therefore, yet again, another winning design was cancelled, with Austin Rover facelifting the Metro to produce the R6 Metro for the 90s. Marketing genius was needed to keep the new Metro selling, and it did. Thanks to the new K-Series engine and tweaked chassis, the new Metro was quite a success. But this was another example of short-term thinking by Austin Rover, now named Rover Group under British aerospace ownership. The Metro wasn't built to last 2 decades, and with the new safety standards, crash testing and the now dominant Japanese cars like the Micra, the Metro's time was up. The brand of Metro could have ended gracefully, with a continuation of the name on a new car such as the AR6 or R6X, potentially leading the Metro into the new millennium. But this was not to be. The Metro, now named the Rover 100 in 1997, would be crash tested by Euro NCAP, ending the life of the Metro in embarrassment and tarnishing the Rover name with it. Any failure by Rover was always well publicised, thanks to them being easy prey for the tabloids at the time. But this time it wasn't an external factor at play, it was for good reason. Based on these standards, the Rover 100 looked hopeless. The A-pillar in this test would be pushed back by 488mm and the steering wheel by 312mm, resulting in an abysmal 1-star rating. The Metro, no matter how brilliant, wasn't immune to the sands of time, and it also wasn't immune to the other manufacturers continually innovating at the time. The Metro was never meant to last this long as a new car, and it showed. Sales suffered as a result, leading to the Metro finally being axed in 1998, ending the life of a great car in embarrassment. The AR6 and R6X prototypes would be stored at Canley and then moved to Gaydon. The R6X would spend its days languishing in storage until it was eventually destroyed in 1995. The AR6 would be preserved and is now on display at the British Motor Museum. The cancellation of AR6 and its related projects is another example of short-term thinking, and how Austin Rover and Rover Group suffered from underinvestment in the late 80s and 90s. The 2 decades that were meant to rectify the lost years of the 70s would be marked at first by innovation and then stagnation, with a tie-in with Honda largely carrying Rover Group through to the BMW buyout, where it would ultimately be destroyed. This isn't to say that there weren't some amazing cars that appeared during that time, but I believe if the new Austin Rover range had been produced with the AR6 and adequate investment, we could have had our own British Volkswagen. But the damage had already been done. The mistakes of the past were a stain on Austin Rover's present in the 1980s, and the short-term thinking towards privatization would further exacerbate these problems. It's not that Austin Rover refused to innovate, it's that they weren't allowed to due to cost constraints of getting a once financially stricken behemoth into a good enough state to be considered for purchase by another company, which of course is an achievement all on its own. And with that, that's the end of the video. What do you think of the AR6 and its related projects? Let me know in the comments below. But as always, thank you for watching, keep watching, and remember to subscribe for more of this, and I'll see you in the next one.